Yeah, the local bookstore, they call me Worm.
You're speaking about last night there was something on Facebook, and it was that sort of thing, something along the lines of when I was growing up, we called everybody auntie and uncle or Mr. and Mrs., you know, and there were a couple of comments passed, and then one of my past pupils came on and said he couldn't think of calling me anything but Mr. Bailey or Sir. And I said to him, listen, you know, I'm beyond that. If you want to call me Graham, you call me Graham. I'm quite comfortable with that. And he just said, just out of respect, he would never, ever even contemplate calling me by my first name.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you don't have to, you know, have that to sort of refer to me as Sir and not call me by my first name. But he's adamant he won't. Mind you, that being said, I was the same with the likes of Mr. Johnson and Mr. Saunders and Mr. Rolls.
I always thought,
the number of times they would say to me, please call me Benji, or, you know, I just said, please understand, it's my upbringing.
The only one of those old sort of people, well, talking about, sorry, Bill, but Bill Lambert, I'll call him William of Wembley and Bill, but I would, Saunders and Mr. Rattray and those, Mr. Johnson, always call him Mr.
Mr. Lambert's another one who's always saying, Bill's the name, and I said, no.
Talk about Bill, I battled, because Mr. Lambert, you're quite right, and he doesn't talk to me now. He says, if you don't talk to me, call me Bill, I'm not going to talk. And he's forced me to call him Bill. But also from another angle is, you know, I'm at a gym, as you all know, at the moment, and there are a lot of youngsters around, but colleagues and friends that work together, you train together, and a lot of the younger guys also, Mr. Linferno, and I hate it. I've forced them to say, please, it's Warren.
Yeah, but the worst thing is when you get that driver's license, the bloke, there's a really nice traffic officer, he said, you look like you're quite old. He said, come in, I'll fill in all your forms and all that. And then he put at the top there, elderly. But the wife didn't take that really well,
Well, it was like I was
we still jumped the queue, that was all right.
Yeah,
we can't be called elderly.
But you are elderly. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I interviewed somebody the other day. He was one of the most senior men in racing, and I asked the jockey, an apprentice in actual fact, you know, it must be a privilege and an honour to ride a winner for a respectable old man of the turf, which he is. He was, and I was hauled over the coals. But I approached the elderly gentleman. He said, well, that's exactly what I am. I mean, if you'd called me an old swine, I might have been upset. But you called me a respectable old gentleman, which is what I am, and it is what it is. But so you're the elderly, eh?
I'm elderly.
Okay, well, we're going to just keep going and enjoy this conversation, which has already started. We've got a man that's with us today, a man that doesn't like the limelight, he doesn't like the spotlight, he doesn't like the accolades, but he's going to step a little out of his comfort zone today, because we're here to talk with Graham Bailey, who is the headmaster of the South African Jockey Academy. He's a good friend and he's a colleague. He's a colleague of the racing industry. He's a colleague of Andrew's, he's a colleague of mine. We're all in the racing industry, and we all do it for the love of the sport. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce and welcome Graham to our show today. Graham, lovely to have you with us.
No, thank you.
We thought we'd battle to get you on.
Yeah, no. It's a couple of people are nervous of us, but there's no need to be nervous. We're a good bunch of guys.
Yeah.
Now I see your hair hasn't grown back yet. It's still very cold up the hill, and it's taking a long time to grow back.
I wish I hadn't cut it off, because it is a bit cold up there.
It's a Thursday, as always. It's a public holiday, so we bring you our show recorded on a Thursday, public holiday or not. We're at the Summerfeld Clubhouse, where the vibe is wonderful. It's warm. You can see there's people around, and it's lovely to have the public come and join us in our podcast recording, and of course to watch the horses work and have breakfast. But it's about Graham, and it's about the South African Jockey Academy, and we're going to enjoy our next 45 minutes together. Let's start off, Graham. You've always been in schooling, in education. Tell us about your previous school before the South African Jockey Academy, and what you, obviously you were the headmaster, but tell us a bit more. Where were you and what did you do there?
Okay, so just to track back a little bit beyond that, I didn't start out in education. When I left school, school, I went and did mechanical engineering down at the Natal Technikon. I worked for a company up in Pietermaritzburg called Connacht Engineering, doing my technicianship, mechanical technicianship. And I had always worked with young people. At the church, I'd been involved with a youth group. So my passion has always been young people. But I worked out in industry for a while. I then worked for a company down in Durban called Hall Thermotank. In fact, Ian Howard, one of the owners, his dad was the managing director of the company at the time, Uncle Jim Howard. And I worked for them for a number of years, and it was from there that I pursued my passion, which was to work with young people. So it was from Hall Thermotank days that I then moved across into education, and I started out at a school called Pinetown Boys High School. And basically, I worked there for 26 years, working my way through the ranks. I started off as a technical drawing teacher, and I coached the first team rugby there. I coached the first team cricket. I coached swimming, athletics. So I was thoroughly involved in all of the sport. And yeah, so that's where I started as an educator, worked my way up as a head of department, and then from there into a deputy position, and from there into the headmaster position for the last 10 years of my time there. I then got seconded across into the Department of Education, into the head office, to do strategic planning for the Department of Education in KwaZulu-Natal. And I was there for about 2 years, but all the time that I was there, I was missing something, and it was the kids. And that's when I saw the advert for the South African Jockey Academy, made application for it, and I think I got lucky. I know that at the time when I was first being introduced to people, a number of people would turn around and say good luck and just bad luck and, you know, sad for you type of thing. But yeah, I have to say I've been at the Academy since 2009, and I've loved every minute of it. It certainly has had its tough times. You know, any job that you're in has its difficult times, and I've always been one of those people, you know, there's always a solution to a problem or a difficulty. So just put your head down and get on and do the work, you know.
Graham, what was the transition? I mean, it's one thing dealing with normal school kids, go through the grades, but you're working for the Jockey Academy. You've got young boys, well, mostly boys, sort of 15, 16-year-old, up against men on the racetrack. And they have to learn quickly, they have to grow up quickly. Do you find that transition a bit difficult?
To be very honest with you, no, it wasn't. You know, for me, the most important thing, and I would do that at every beginning of a year when we had the apprentices come in for the first day when we would do their indentures. So they were there with their parents, and I would say to them that they needed to understand that they had chosen to start a profession, and that the days of being a child and playing silly games and being childish were over. And that they needed to understand that they were going to be working in an adult's world when they weren't quite yet adults themselves. And so they needed to know right up front that it's not a pony club that they're attending. This is a profession. This is where you set your standards. And they all know that, you know, I hammer it into them the whole time that you are only going to be as good as you allow yourself to be. So if you're going to be hiding behind fences and not riding the work, or you're not interacting with people in an appropriate way, you're disadvantaging yourself. So it's all about growing up, and I think we've built structures within the academy which allows them to understand that.
Well, the Jockey Academy must be the only institution in South Africa now that has an apprenticeship period. We don't have apprenticeships anymore.
Yeah.
Basically called apprentices. So
Yeah. No.
It's one thing about Graham, and there's no pun intended, there's no grey area when it comes to Graham. You know, you mentioned that you would have explained and made yourself very clear, and that is one of the reasons for his success and for the institution's success, because there's no grey area. You know exactly where you stand, you know what's expected of you, and it's always important that you do that, because it's as you say, it's not a pony school, it's not a pony camp. This is a serious business, and that's always made clear right from the beginning. I've had the privilege of working with Graham for many years, and you know exactly where you stand.
I think it's just, if I could say, you know, my dad was a hard taskmaster, and if he had asked me to do something, I had to do it the way it should be done, because he would say, if you're not going to do it properly, don't do it, and I'll do it myself. And I'm afraid to say I've inherited those genes, and people will tell you, you know, if I ask somebody to do something and they don't do it the way it needs to be done, I'll do it myself.
But it's a discipline that sort of disappeared in the modern world. You know, kids, they just, unless you keep them on the straight and narrow, they just go out.
We certainly don't have to go according to the script, but you talk about discipline, and I was going to talk to you about respect and manners, and it's great that we just jump around. That's the beauty of the conversation. Discipline, respect, manners, in nowadays, in today's current terms, to be quite frank with you, are lacking, in my opinion.
You know, if I could just, again, when I was coaching the first rugby side at Pinetown Boys High, I realized towards the end of my time of coaching that certainly at schoolboy level, professional sport was right at its beginning stages, and there was a lot of money now being put into the games. So the whole approach to training a first rugby team had changed. You know, I mean, if you look at a school like Maritzburg College, you had Skonk Nicholson, who coached the Maritzburg first rugby side for years and years and years, and he was the schoolmaster, and that's what he did. You know, he is known for coaching the first rugby side. But at the end of my tenure, I realized that I'd been a hooker in my days and played my rugby in that position. So I was pretty good at coaching up at front end, but the back line I'd never played it. So the expertise and the skill that was needed there was lacking. So what I ended up doing was having a young chap who had been in the first team, a chap by the name of John O'Farrell. He came in and coached the back line, pretty much like your professional rugby sides and cricket sides today. So, and we did that at Pinetown Boys High School, where we introduced a fitness coach, we introduced the backline coach, we introduced I was doing the forwards and that. So there was a team coaching the team. And that was one of the things that I did when I started here at the academy, was I looked at it and said, we are developing elite sportsmen. That's what those jockeys are. They are elite sportsmen. They need to be recognized as elite sportsmen and treated as elite sportsmen. So the fact of just and I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody prior to my time, but just putting the kids up on a horse wasn't good enough for me. We needed to inculcate that whole attitude of being an elite sportsman and being a product. And you as a jockey, more so than any other sport, you've got to sell yourself. So in terms of those manners, if you don't have those manners, you're not going to win confidence within trainers. If you don't speak appropriately, I know Louis Huerson phones me a number of times and gets angry, and rightly so, with the way the kids write their Facebook messages, from gun to post type of thing. Like he says, there's no gun at the start of a horse race. Why use that terminology? Speak in professional way about the way you're riding and that. So that was the start of my, and again, there have been a couple of people that have criticized me quite strongly about introducing my rugby tactics into the Jockey Academy. I don't believe I've introduced any rugby tactics at all. What I have introduced is a professional approach to the development of elite sportsmen, elite jockeys. That's where we brought in, the dietitian and nutritionist, the biokineticist, the sports scientist, the psychologist. All of those are there to assist the kids in making sure that they understand the importance of being professional jockeys right now. That's been my approach.
Well, they always say manners maketh man, but absolutely. The thing is, if you're going over to just leave South Africa out of it, if you're good enough and you're going right in Hong Kong or England or one of those places, if you've got good manners and a good grounder, you will go somewhere.
Absolutely.
You look at Felix Gussie, Basil Marcus, Dougie White, all products of the Jockey Academy, but they've had manners and had a good way with people, and they've gone far.
Just to add to that, Andrew, I've been very fortunate in the sense that I've been able to accompany a couple of apprentices to international apprentice challenges. So I took Donovan Dillon to Qatar, where he actually won the challenge. I took Julius Mariba to New Zealand, where he came third. And then myself and Rob Moore have been to France. Unfortunately, the COVID has put a stop to that. But the three occasions that we went across, we took Mpumi and Jorka with us. We took Cabello Mazziani with us. We took Liam Tarantal, were the three that we took across. Mpumi won it. Cabello came third in it, I think, as well. But I want to just say to you that those kids, once they were there, the people absolutely loved it. They could not believe the manners. They could not believe the way they interacted with people. They became the stars of the shows just because of their manners, because of the way they dressed. Was for me so important, they did us huge credit, absolute credit.
That's a pretty COVID sort of stopped all that sort of thing. But I mean, surely it'll come back now. With Turkey and the British racing, racing academy and those sort of places, Canada. You build that up now that the COVID sort of thing in the past, sort of.
Well, look, just to look at the academy, obviously one of the things that I do, having an engineering background, is I'm hot on statistics and numbers the whole time. I'm always looking at that sort of thing. So I've got my statistics that I go back to 2003 with. I'm watching all the time in terms of supply and demand. So how many jockeys have we got in the system? How many jockeys are potentially retiring? How many are we going to possibly lose to immigration, etc., etc. So I'm looking at what we as an academy need to do in terms of feeding into the system to make sure that we've got sufficient jockeys for the industry. And sadly, we've been reducing our numbers on an annual basis because of the fact that we don't need that many jockeys. The other thing that, we've got a very young jockey base in South Africa at the moment. I mean, the majority of our jockeys are sitting under the age of 39.
Sure.
More than 70% of our jockeys are under the age of 39. So you've got that, which is going to carry you through for a number of years, and certainly why we haven't taken apprentices in the last couple of years. But the problem is that impacts the future sustainability of the academy. We presented at the Asian Racing Federation down in Cape Town in 2020, and we had made a decision as a management team that because of the smaller number of local jockeys that needed to be trained, we had strategically made the decision to look at marketing ourselves internationally, to bring international apprentices and train them for a period of time, send them back to their own countries to race. But we would get an income from those internationals. And we presented at the Asian Racing Federation in 2020, and we had a lot of interest. In fact, we were due to have 4 apprentices coming to us from Turkey in April of 2020, and in March we closed down. So that's hammered us, So we've had to look at alternative forms of training in the equine and equestrian fields to keep ourselves sustainable. So that's what we're doing at the moment. We're looking at training for the traditional racing community, and we've got a couple of other things that we're working on at the moment in terms of potentially opening up the equestrian section again at the academy. So yeah, we're working on that type of stuff.
Graham, the race meeting at Hollywood Bet Scottsville a long time ago, I bumped into Lyle Hewitson when he was still a work rider. And Andrew, you've heard the story before, and I'm sure Graham has as well. And I said to Lyle, wonderful that you're riding all these winners as a work rider, are you going to go to the academy, etc., etc.? And he said, absolutely. He said, but my parents are not allowing me to go near until I've finished my matric. I've got my matric certificate. Now, I know that you feel the same way. I know that the Jockey Academy, you get your matric there, but whether it's at another school and then joining the academy or finishing your education at the academy, but you are in that camp. Tell us why. What is the importance of a must matric certificate?
Well, first of all, if you speak to any jockey from South Africa that is trying to apply to go across to any other country, the first thing they ask them for is their matric certificate or year level 12 certificate. So if you haven't got that,
already you're out the water.
You're not going to get into those other countries. So that's for starters. And sadly, that attitude of they're going to be jockeys and therefore they don't need an education, well, that's archaic.
Yeah, it is okay. I mean, if you look at all those old time jockeys, a lot of them, I mean, they had a fall or something and the career ended in there and they don't know what to do.
Well, that's exactly it. That's exactly it, Andrew. And of course, you know, there's a limit to the amount of people that the racing industry itself can absorb like that, you know. So you have to give yourself other options. And again, I know I'm going to be criticized again for referring back to the rugby academies and the cricket academies and all of those academies. But if you have a look at those academies, they are equally as strong on education. While the kids are there playing the sport, they are also getting an education. The academies insist that they do some sort of diploma or degree. Again, rightly so. You never know from one day to the next when your career is going to end in any professional sporting game. So you have to have an alternative option to go to. And if you don't have a matric, it's going to create a problem for you. So, you know, in the past, and I'm now talking way back in the past when I was at school and Andrew was at school, you could get to a standard 8 and then you could go out at the end of a standard 8 and do a trade, but you had a trade behind you. You had a trade ticket.
So an apprenticeship, yeah.
You had an apprenticeship. You had you went up to Olifantsfontein, you wrote your trade test, and that trade test was internationally recognized as well.
You were a plumber or an electrician or
it didn't matter what trade,
mechanic.
Exactly. It didn't matter what trade you came from. Those trades from the past were internationally recognized. And even today, even right now, even with the new system, the South African qualifications in terms of trade are still recognized. You might have to, if you're doing plumbing for argument's sake, you might have to go and do a bit of a local test to just upskill yourself to their standards, but the baseline is you've got that trade.
I always wished I'd become a diesel mechanic. That'd be a lot richer than I am now.
Yeah, but also
that's
too,
still going.
I mean, the racing industry would have lost your lovely talent, because you also don't like to have the spotlight on you, but you're a wonderful writer. I'm not so sure about your tipping.
I would have been a better diesel mechanic.
Okay, I won't argue that. Graham, the academy, you know, has, like any business, like any operation, you know, has gone through difficult times financially, and everyone's taken the knock. But to be quite frank, it's not a secret. There were times where the academy, they were on their knees and nearly flat on the ground. But things are coming good, like for the racing industry and for other, you know, personal, private businesses, etc. What's the future of the academy? Are you back up and ready to fire again, or is it still a little shaky?
Listen, we you know, towards the end of last year, it became quite a tough decision as to whether we were going to, in fact, be able to continue to operate. But thankfully a number of the board members said we've got to keep pushing and keep trying. So, you know, we are looking at a number of things at the moment to keep ourselves sustainable. I have to say, during my time at the academy, I had developed a really good relationship with a gentleman by the name of Edward Lalumbi, who was with the Gauteng Gambling Board. And Edward used to, every sort of 2 years or so, he would bring the Gauteng Gambling Board members down as a group, and we would take them through the academy and show them what we were doing and what we were about. And they were amazing, because every time they went back, they weren't home too long, and I'd get an email from Edward saying, put your next project together, give us a costing and make a submission. And a couple of months after that, we would be getting money from the Gauteng Gambling Board. Sadly, that has sort of come to a bit of a grind at the moment because Edward was killed in a motor car accident with his wife in 2019, which was really sad. But I have to say, again, you know, Hollywood Bets, they came out and visited the academy, and they saw what we were doing, and they've come to the party.
They've been a godsend to racing.
They've been a godsend to racing.
Without any doubt, you know, and just... You can't sing their praises highly enough in terms of what Hollywood Bets has done for us as an academy. And I'm sure that we could possibly, you know, have a lasting relationship with them. So, yeah, it's the future is tough, but we've survived, and we will continue to fight the fight.
Do you get any support from the local gambling board?
Sadly, no. I've applied to them on numerous occasions, and unfortunately,
they're just trying to suck us dry.
The KZN gambling board haven't come to the party with anything. And government funding has been a difficulty. You know, I applied and got funding once from the Cath-Ceta, and sadly the CEO and the CFO at the time, the CEO was Mike Tsitsots, and they understood the value of what we were doing in terms of development of young people. And what ended up happening was we applied, and they granted us bursaries and scholarships for apprentices, and both the CEO and the CFO were then put on suspension because they had a bit of a fallout with the Cath-Ceta board at the time. And then that board was put under administration. The administrator and one of his gentlemen came down to the academy and told us that we had received the money illegitimately, and that we had received far more than what they were prepared to pay. So they were going to reduce it by more than half, and we either accepted it or we accepted nothing. And yeah, you know, we ended up having to take the half, but we've never had funding from them again, despite our skills levy being paid into the Cath-Ceta. You know, and that's where there's problems. Is that the government organisations that should be funding the upliftment programs and providing the funding for that are not doing it. And you now depend on the likes of Hollywood Bets and, you know, the operators themselves who are subsidising us.
Sort of private funding.
Yeah, you know, the operators themselves have been under huge pressure, yet they've had to continue to fund us. Because if we didn't have the operators fund, that would blow us out the water. We can shut shop now and go home. That's it, finished and clear.
You know, you talk about, Graham mentioned that you brought people to the academy from these various organisations to see the operation and you and I were just having a conversation on the telephone the other day with this whole government tax, and we're not getting into that debate. The point I'm making is that they're doing a study now to see that I don't think they realise, that the general public don't realise the knock-on effect it has and the amount of people and families that the racing industry supports. It's big. It's a big industry, and there's a lot of mouths to be fed out of that industry. You know, because it's not only you, it's you, your wife, your children, your housekeeping staff. It just keeps going. You know, it's a big knock-on effect. So, as Graham said, you know, the Gauteng Gambling Board obviously realised that when they went to the organisation. So I think we've got to keep drumming that into that. It's a big picture. It's a whole lot of us. Yeah. It's a knock-on effect.
Well, that sort of is one of my pet areas. You know, what I keep saying to people is they don't understand what the equine and equestrian industry offers to GDP. And, you know, I mean, if you take a look, we've just got a group up at the moment from the Eastern Cape, and I was just saying to them on Monday morning, what they need to understand is that effectively for every 3 horses that we lose out of racing, and I'm speaking specifically now racing, I'm not talking the other equestrian disciplines, I'm speaking racing. For every 3 horses that we lose, you lose a groom's job. That, if you have a look at it, impacts on the farmer, because you're needing less feed. It impacts on the feed company. It impacts on the farriers that you need. It impacts on the dentists you need. It impacts on the vets that you need. And so it carries on. So if you just take a look, in 1990, there were 8,830 horses in training.
She said, I'd love to know what the figure is now.
Well, right, in 2020, you had 5,557. So you can just see, just take that and picture that for one moment, how many jobs have been lost because of our industry shrinking. And the impact that shrinkage has. Whereas what we should be doing is encouraging government to grow the sport, because the bigger it gets, the more employment you can provide.
Well, they're always complaining that there's no jobs for young people, but if you're shrinking the economy, what's going to happen? Well, it's basically sort of a microcosm of the whole country, really.
Yeah.
Is that the last, so that was 2020, that figure?
Yeah. It'll probably be less than that now. I mean, if you just have a look, if we look at the 2010-2011 season, I'm talking runners. I'm not talking horses in training. I'm speaking specifically runners now, because that's what I've worked on. There were 45,524 runners in that season. If you go to 2019, or the 2018-2019 season, that had dropped down to 38,485. And then, of course, we had COVID, which really hammered us. We then dropped down to 30,239. And then we sort of crept up a little bit last year with 34,292. Currently, as of yesterday's date, we're sitting with 26,243 runners. So we are still 8,049 runners short of breaking even with this season. And we've got a month and a half to go for the season. So, yeah.
Graham, we talk about your establishment. You've had wonderful boards over the, board members come and go. You've had phenomenal chairmen and vice chairmen, and maybe cheerladies or ladies on the board, and riding masters. Of course, they've retired and come and gone. And your staff, touch on them, because it would be remiss if we didn't.
Yeah, when I first started at the academy, the gentleman at the time that was the chairman was a gentleman by the name of Brian Allison, and he at the time said that he was wanting to call it a day at the academy as chairman, and we then had to find another chairman, and in walked Mr. Everson Carlisle, and he was chairman until basically he passed away, and he was an amazing mentor for me. I mean, he was like a father figure to me, besides being the chairman of the board. If he was unhappy with something, he would let me know that he was unhappy. He would certainly offer me guidance and direction. And he and Mary were passionate about the academy. They loved the kids. They loved the environment. They would regularly pop down and come in and bring a couple of cakes and have cakes and tea with the staff, and he was a real gentleman, an absolute gentleman.
Mary too. I mean, now that we've sadly lost Everson, I mean, she still now comes to the races, which is wonderful. You saw her the other day at Scottsville, Mary. And then, of course, the board, passionate racing people.
Yeah, so, I mean, the board's been fairly stable for quite a long time. Graham Hawkins has been on the board the whole time that I've been there. Patrick Davis from Pumalela has been on the board the whole time. Dave Finesse has been the secretary to the board. So, yeah, real solid people,
Riding masters, of course, Vincent Curtis, I mean, the legend.
Vincent still has a finger in the pie, when we have our riding masters meetings, Vincent is invited to attend those meetings, and when we did go out looking for the next year's recruits, Vincent was always along as one of the consultants. Stevie Jupp was one of the riding masters there, and
I was trying to think, there was David Cavey as well.
Dave Cavey. Unfortunately, that was before my time, so I didn't know Dave.
His nickname?
Skunky.
And Lawrence O'Donoghue was there with me. Those are certainly characters,
Graham, just a question that's come to my mind. Sorry to interrupt you. It's not on our script, but it's just come to my mind now, and it's maybe a bit of a tough question, maybe it's not. You often hear people say, well, KZN is always treated as the nursery to get the guys going and the girls going, and the next minute they're whisked off to Robert Moore and Gauteng to Joburg. Why is that? And I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you.
Well, this is certainly the nursery. This is where all the groundwork is done, and one's got to understand the expense. I mean, you can't have the facility that we have down here at each of the centres. The other thing that one's got to remember is that once the kids start race riding in particular, you can't flood the KZN area. So you have to give them exposure to other areas, and that's why we opened up academies down in Port Elizabeth and Cape Town, to give those, if you've got a whole lot of kids coming out at the same time in a particular cohort, they're all claiming for. There's a limit to the number of trainers that are going to be able to use those claim fours. So if you send them out to the different centres, you're spreading that load, which then allows those claim fours to gain the experience that they need to claim, to ride out those claims. So that was the rationale behind having the centres out there.
And also Joburg, they race a lot more often. I mean, it's more experience.
They do race. They racing at least 3 to 4 times a week.
What's going to happen next month when Joburg and Cape Town close down for the month?
Well, look,
you're going to have a lot of apprentices here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
you see, we don't have a lot of apprentices. I mean, we've only got 12 apprentices in the system at the moment. We've had to reduce the number right down because of the circumstances. So we no longer have the Port Elizabeth Academy. We had to close that down a number of years ago when the financial pressure was starting. We then had to close Cape Town down. So we only have the Durban and the Joburg Centre. So the kids that are up in Joburg, we've only got 4 because Jeffrey Saster qualified yesterday or the day before.
Yes, it was lovely to see on the social media platforms. Lovely,
So with him now qualifying, we've only got 4 apprentices left up in Joburg. So those 4 will probably be brought down here and ply their trade down here.
Okay, that's good news. That's very good news. I'm just going to hit a blank for a moment. We were talking before we started about hitting blanks. Yes, your day-to-day, not that everyone's a team, nobody's ranked, but your day-to-day staff at the academy are, who are we waving at?
Joey Summer.
Okay. I didn't want to, I greeted him earlier, I didn't want to be rude. Your day-to-day staff, the running of the academy, down to the ground staff, the kitchen staff, each and every individual is an important cog in that wheel.
Yeah, Warren, they are, through the years we've had to rationalize. So, what I tend to do is I'll get into the office by sort of 7 o'clock in the morning and deal with all the admin stuff that I need to deal with. We've only got 3 ground staff that I work with, so I personally do a lot of the stuff myself, as you know.
Graham, I want to stop you there, not to be rude again. Work. You, a good worker, you lead by example, you do work. I've seen Graham will be in a full suit in the morning for assembly. He will then take his tie off and just get into maybe a t-shirt, go and mow the lawn, go and, a lot of people say that you shouldn't be doing that, but that's your way. You wouldn't have it any other way.
No.
Hard work has never killed anybody.
Absolutely. And that's what it's about, Warren, is, every single person down at the academy wears more than one cap. So, I speak about myself doing the maintenance and cutting paddocks with the tractor and working on the tractor and repairing the equipment.
You're a good mechanic.
And I do that because I can do it.
Yes.
So, if I take each person at that academy and run through them, Marius now runs the academic department. He looks after the dormitories. He's involved in a number of other areas. Sister Butt currently running the recruitment besides doing her sisterly duties. She's the health and safety officer. She runs the support team. So, she's not just the nursing sister. She does a whole lot more. And that's the way the academy works down there. Each member of staff knows that, sometimes the cleaning staff are going to be doing more than just cleaning. They might need to rake up leaves, and so we just do what we have to do. I mean, we've got 2 ladies that work in the kitchen with the kitchen manager Bernadette, and they do an amazing job, so it is what it is. You just do what you have to do.
I'd like to work in that kitchen. Jockeys aren't allowed to eat too much.
But you've met Marius. I mean, Graham just touched on him. He's part of the furniture. He's a man that's dedicated his whole life and continues to do so. Okay. Excuse me. I was talking about mechanic but you do all sorts of handiwork, and not only in your working time, but you're also your hobbies. You do woodwork, you do fixing things, you're good with your hands, and you enjoy all that, Graham. Unlike me.
Warren, Marianne will tell you that I think I frustrate her at times because I'm not somebody that can just sit and do nothing. I read a book because I need to know something. I'm working. If I haven't got anything that I need to do for the academy, I'm in the workshop doing my own thing. I think like I said earlier on, I think I inherited the genes from my father. He was the same. We can't sit on our bums doing nothing. We've got to be out there using these things because we can use them. So
But it's a blessing and a talent because, you know, I'm by no means a handyman. I can hardly put a plug together. But, you know, we've all been blessed with different talents and different abilities, and that's what makes us all so unique and also... You're not much of a handyman, are you?
Well, I can change light bulbs.
Okay, that I can do too. But I mean, you do. I suppose you mow the lawn too. Well, I've got instant lawn at home, so you're right. I probably am a bit lazy. Hobbies, Graham, bird watching. You enjoy wildlife, and you just love being in the outdoors. What do you do in your spare time when you do have some spare time?
yeah, look, you know, we caravan a lot.
Okay.
So we enjoy taking the caravan away. We enjoy doing the coastal thing. I enjoy fishing. I love fishing, so I'm more than happy to take my rods with me. And
You two will get on well.
No, he won't, because he takes his caravan to the Kruger.
You can't sleep on the floor in the bush.
They're always blocking the roads.
and then I go into the mountains and I take my fly rod with me and I go and fish the streams or fish the dams and throw a fly on the water.
Olive woolly bugger with the orange bead is working well at the moment.
Yeah, no, I just, so bird watching is, and it's what Andrew's grumbling about at the moment. You know, we've got a sticker on the back of the caravan that says, I'm a bird watcher, please pass quietly. You know?
Please pass quietly.
Because, you stopped and you watching the birds and these guys roar up alongside of you thinking that there's a lion or something.
It's a LBJ, a little brown job, or any bird.
Talking about manners, Kruger's manners are deteriorating South Africa now. When you stop on the side of the road, you could be watching a leopard in the grass. That just goes.
Well, then that shows.
Or they'll push in front of you.
Yes.
Or they'll just worm their way through and get right in front of you and block your view so that they can get their photograph. You know?
No, it's amazing because, you wonder, if the ones that just go past, what are they there for? To be seen in the Kruger.
Because it's lunchtime at the next one.
Yeah. No. So
Graham, you're retiring in a month, so you've got lots to do.
Well, you're going to be retiring, but we're not going to be losing you completely, thank God.
Yeah, look, I have said to the board that I'm happy to help in any way or form. You know, the only I had been asked by the board to go to the end of this year, just to see that we could build a bit of stability, and if the worst case scenario had to arrive where we were closing down, I would be there to do that as well, sadly. But just with me having had my heart attack in December,
it puts everything into perspective.
As I said earlier on, the first time, because it was COVID, so you weren't allowed to have people at the hospital and all of that sort of thing. And the first time Mary Ann came and saw me, she said to me, the first thing she said to me was that was her greatest fear, that she retired at the end of last year. In December, she retired as the executive headmistress down at Urban Girls College. And, her comment was, her greatest fear was that we would reach retirement age and we wouldn't get to have done the bucket list things that we were wanting to do. Just having my granddaughters there, not being able to see them, seeing how that affected them. I cough now and they want to know that I'm okay, I had to come back to the board and say, I've just had to rethink this, and with their blessing, I would like to go at the end of June. But I will certainly, I will never turn my back on the academy. I'm not one of those people.
Sure.
So I'm available to help as much as they want me to help. without anybody feeling that I'm still holding onto the academy. You know, I'm there to help as much as possible, but at the same time, I don't want to let anybody feel that I'm imposing myself on them, not in any way or form. So yeah.
You're a family man. You've touched on Mary Ann, your wife, and your grandkids, and your daughters, and just now, as you say, is the time to be with them. They're up in Pretoria. We're obviously in Durban, and they must be thrilled.
Yeah, you know, we made a decision about 8 years ago. Our daughter, I don't like calling my son-in-law. He's my son.
Yes.
So our daughter and son said to us, you know, what were we going to do when we retired? And I said, well, we had hoped at some stage that they would come down and live with us, because our home in Forest Hills had a granny flat on it, and Mary and myself would move into the granny flat and they would take over the main house. And my son is a mechanical engineer, so the kids said to us, look, you know, engineering is certainly up that part of the world compared to down here. Would we consider selling our home and we buy a property together, which is what we did. So 7 years ago, we bought a piece of ground up in Pretoria East, and I like to tease people and say, us Zulus, we're going to teach those Swanis how to build an Nkandla, because we've built an Nkandla with the fire pit as well.
Okay.
So the kids have the main house. My mom is living in her own little granny flat on the one side, and Mary Ann and myself are going to be in a little 2-bedroom granny flat on the other side.
Okay. Fantastic.
So, yeah, that's what we're going to be doing.
Lovely, fantastic. Okay. And Graham, your health, and you say that every time you cough, the little kids get a little agitated, but you know you're looking good, and obviously when you came out of hospital, you were a little thin, but you're coming back to good health, and you're on the road.
So the leftovers from the apprentices.
You know, Warren, I believe the cardiologist that I'm under up there is well renowned up there and well respected. And within 2 days of me having had the heart attack, he said, look, you need to start rehabilitation. And that's what I did. 2 weeks after the heart attack, I was going back to the hospital, to the rehabilitation clinic, and working with a physiotherapist there. So yeah, I've been walking. I was only allowed to walk for 24 minutes on the treadmill, whereas now I'm walking here. I take my 2 boxer dogs, and the 2 of us do a 5-kilometer route, and we're doing that in an hour now. Okay. So, you know, I'm walking, I'm not meant to pick up too heavier weights, so I am doing some work with weight, just to make sure that I keep myself strong and healthy. So yeah, I'm certainly a lot better than I was on the 30th of December.
Graham, last question, or just to talk about one more thing before we move on to the news and a few general things that we're going to chat about, Andrew and I, and to wrap up, because it is a public holiday, and I'm sure you want to, although I know you're not a man to put your feet up, but I'm sure you want to go and get home and relax for a bit. The academies produce phenomenal riders, champions all over the place. Andrew said earlier on, the majority male, but this young lady, Rachel Vennick, has come along and taken the country by storm.
I was hoping you weren't going to bring that one up, Warren. I didn't check that one. Okay, so, Rachel came to the academy. Now, I can't remember the dates right at the moment, but she came to the academy with her dad, wanting to apply, and I said to her, okay, you're going to go and do some gym stuff with the sports scientist, and Taryn came back with the results, and I said to her, look, Rachel, your fitness levels and your strength are way below what we look for, you know. So I think you need to work on that before we can consider taking you into the academy. And then she came back a year later and knocked on the door again, and her dad was there again and with her, and again I said to her, Rachel, you know, I'm really worried about the weight that you're at the moment, and I don't think, I think rather get your matric done first where you're at the Waldorf school, and we'll consider it at another time. And off Rachel went. So yeah, I thought, oh well, you know, that's the end of it type of thing. And then we had a board meeting at the academy, and Michael Roberts, Garth Puller, and Kevin Wright arrived at the door and asked if they could address the board, and obviously Everson said no, that's fine. And they said, look, we've got this girl, Rachel, and we think she should be given a chance. So they left, and the board said, well, you know, she's asking for a chance, and these three respected trainers have basically vouched for her, so perhaps we need to do that. So yeah, I sit here with mud on my face because I turned her down twice. The trainers came and pleaded her cause, and the rest is actually history. So if you had asked me for my biggest blooper at the academy, I think that is it. You know, that I turned her down on 2 occasions, and she's just proved me totally wrong.
And knowing the man that you are, you're happy that she's done that.
Without a doubt.
You know, and knowing that the man you are, you and her have got the most phenomenal relationship at the academy, and you had good intent. You were genuinely worried about her weight and her etc. and it's turned out for the good, thank God.
Yeah, well, you know, I'd always said one of my dreams was that we would produce at least one good female jockey, and you know, I'm probably going to say something that I'm going to be very unpopular for, but there's prejudice in our game. You know, people aren't prepared to give the girls a fair opportunity, because I've seen a couple of really good girls coming through the system. Justine King was good. Denise Lee was good, and you know, you then go back to the girls before I was at the academy. You know, your Danny McCready's and your Michelle Genevieve, Lisa Prestwood. You know, I mean, the whole lot of them. I really believe that if they'd been given opportunities at the time, we might be sitting in a different position today.
Sure.
But yeah, it is what it is.
It's ended phenomenally well. It's a wonderful story, and it's a wonderful story. It might not have started, as you say, so well, but it's a great story because you were making the decisions with a good heart and good intention, and you wanted to. Your dream was to have a good female rider. You're about to retire, and there you've got one. So don't be so hard on yourself.
I've always said to the kids, you know, I've always said to them, the day the apprentices ride the winner in each of the races would be the day I'd retire, and we've got close to it a couple of times.
That's why you're only three-quarters retiring.
But you know, that would have been for me a dream, is to have had the apprentices ride the card, and certainly having Rachel stand up on her own and come through. I really just pray that she has a long and successful career.
Before we close up and wish Graham well, a couple of things we must talk about. The racing this weekend. Hollywood Bets Scottsville. there is the 300,000 Rand Track and Ball Oaks, it's a Group 2 event, and the 175,000 Track and Ball Derby, a Group 3 event. That's why I'm wearing my Track and Ball shirt. You didn't get the memo.
Well, I haven't got a shirt, so what's the
So I suppose you can't wear the shirt. Okay, good enough. The Track and Ball Oaks Grade 2 and the Track and Ball Derby Grade 3.
Yeah.
What have you tipped? Don't tell me you can't remember, because I'm not going to let you off that easily. What did you tip very quickly in the Derby?
I've gone for Silvano's Timer.
Silvano's Timer. I agree with you. I do like Silvano's Timer, and for me, my value in the race is Spring Fling. I think Spring Fling is going to run a good race. Then the Oaks, the Track and Ball Oaks. Andrew, I think that's a competitive race. What have you gone for?
Yeah, I've gone, she's a keeper. I think if she stays, she'll win.
Yeah, she certainly
But
won
the
very
distance
well.
could be a bit of a
She won very well last time. My lurker there is Pink Tourmaline. So lots of racing. There's also been Royal Ascot during the week. Fabulous racing. Have you watched any of the Royal Ascot racing? Yeah, phenomenal. The July, the Vodacom, used to be the Vodacom Durban July, now the Hollywood Bets Durban July. And
It's good to see Pierce Stratum riding.
yeah, Pierce Stratum riding, absolutely. Look at that. He's come back after Bulgaria. But have you got, is the picture any clearer for you? Anything that you like, or have you got a firm first choice?
No, I like the toss of the Cox that Moisey's riding.
Safe Passage.
Safe Passage,
Safe Passage. You'll be at the July. You said this year you'll be at the Hollywood Bets at Durban July. Well, that's good. And one last thing before we thank Graham and wrap up is a lot of people are still bumping into me and asking me about A, how they can punt, and of course we lead them in the right direction, and B, how can they become owners, racehorse owners. And I said it on TV the other day, there is a lot of syndicates that are involved. You don't have to be a multi-gazillionaire, you don't have to own 100% of a racehorse, you can own 2% of a racehorse, you can own 1% of a racehorse, get involved in the syndicates. There's tons of syndicates. I'm very proud. You'll follow on the Facebook page the People's Syndicate, and on the Instagram page. I've got involved in that syndicate as well. The first runner is on Wednesday next week up at Hollywood Bet Scottsville, so we'll see you there. And
What's it called?
It's called the syndicate or the horse?
The horse.
The horse is called Winning. We want to get you into our syndicate, and there's many others. If you don't want my syndicate, you can go to any other syndicate.
Win or not?
It's called Winning Single. It's trained by Vaughan Marshall, and it's going to be ridden by Keegan DeMello, and we're very excited. A young bunch of punters that come to the race course on a weekly basis and have approached us to say, how can they have a share in the horse? Well, that's the way how, and I can tell you they're excited. So keep an eye out for the People's Syndicate. But Graham, that's a wrap from us. It's been wonderful. We've been long, but we could have sat here all day, and we haven't even, as I say, scratched the surface, because there's so many things that we want to talk about, but we just run out of time. But thank you for your service to the industry. Thank you for your hospitality. Whenever we're around you, it's just a warm, fuzzy feeling, and that's just to your good nature. Thank you for serving the industry, and it's not a farewell, because we're going to certainly bump into you along the way.
Absolutely. Thank you, Warren. I've really enjoyed it, and thank you to the industry for having me in it. I'm sure there are going to be a couple that are going to be quite happy to see the back end of me.
Well, that's their problem. That's their problem. There's going to be. You say there might be a couple that will be happy to see the back end of you. Please believe me, there'll be a lot more that'll be very sad to see the back of you. Somebody told me once when I said when I first started in the industry and I started presenting, you were one of them. And I said, oh gosh, one chap sent me a mail and said he didn't like what I did. And he said, well, how many others did you get? I said, no, just one. He said, did you get anything positive? I said, yeah, I bumped into 10 people. And they said, he said, well, don't worry about the one, worry about the 10. So that's quite true. But from all of us here at the Summerfeld Clubhouse, it's been wonderful to talk with Graham. Lovely to have Andrew come down the hill on his public holiday. Thank you to everybody. Thank you for your support. Remember, we take no negativity, no horribleness. That's not a word, No. Horribleness. How do I say? We take no horrid... no bad talk.
Horrible.
No horrible. We don't want anybody to be horrible, and just be safe, and thank you for your support. And as always, we'll see you in the #1 box from Hollywood Bets Scottsville this weekend.